of House Republicans, led by Congressman Steve King of Iowa, are holding a press conference in opposition to the Senate's Gang of Eight bipartisan immigration bill. This is just getting underway.
And comment on what's happening with the immigration issue across in the Senate and what's happening in this country. I'm Congressman Steve King. I represent Iowa's 4th Congressional District. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, some of us were in discussion wondering when the conservatives were going to speak up on this amnesty bill that was unfolding in the United States Senate and that was being, I'll say, put together behind the scenes in the House. And Congressman Lou Barletta and I had a conversation on the floor. That started a meeting that we had, and about 6 people arrived at that meeting to discuss how we were going to protect and defend the rule of law. From that time, we've had several other meetings, done a little bit of other press, and also pledged ourselves that we were going to do 1-minute floor speeches, op-eds, press releases to get the message out that there's another viewpoint. Here, it's not the one that is being stampeded in the Senate and it may be stampeded in the House. And so I would just submit to you that I have said on the Immigration Subcommittee, I'm into my 11th year. I don't know how many have spent more time studying this issue than I have. There likely are a few. One of them is Lamar Smith, who is the author of the 1996 Immigration Reform Act and just the most recent past chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He sends his regrets. He would very much like to be here. He has a pinched nerve in his back that disallows him to be here today, as is the case for Lou Barletta, who badly wanted to be here and couldn't make the transportation work out. He'll be passing out a letter that he wanted to submit, but both of those gentlemen wanted to join their support in this press conference. I would make this point that the 844-page bill over in the Senate, whether amended or not, in what ways we can anticipate it might be, is a terrible idea if you look at it from an economic perspective. At no stage in their lives does the universe of those who would receive amnesty make a net financial contribution to this country. At no stage, not a single year out of all those years. And that's off of Heritage Foundation's report, Robert Richter's report, which many of you be familiar with. It destroys the rule of law. And the rule of law is an essential pillar of American exceptionalism. Many people come here because we have equal justice under the law. If we reward people who break the law, they're unlikely to raise their children to respect it. The rule of law, at least with regard to immigration, it would be destroyed. And the promise that the law would be enforced from this point forward, I don't know how we can listen to that with a straight face. We remember the '86 Amnesty Act, and each Amnesty Act since then, there are about 6 after that, smaller ones that didn't meet the news so much, and they also were the promises for the next group that would be amnestied. This group of 11.3 million that they're calculating will be bigger than they say. That always has been the case. It was roughly going to be 1 million in 1986. It became 3 million in 1986. This number will be larger. It's predicted to be something like 33 million by the time you add in the legal and illegal, and I think that number perhaps grows from there. The assimilation that's been an important part of America is a different scenario than we have had in the past. I've noticed that the people that are for open borders aren't really the embracers of assimilation. And assimilation is what has made America great, the giant melding pot. I'm for that. I want to see people co-mingle and intermingle. I want to see them embrace this thing called cultural continuity. That's the American culture and civilization. They promise about learning English. It's easy to follow through with that promise. Let's just pass the official English bill. They aren't willing to do that because they're not serious. And it doesn't either take into consideration the illegal drugs that come across the southern border. It's a promise to secure the border, not much of a promise, but a promise. 80 to 90% of the illegal drugs consumed in America come from or through Mexico. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. We can secure this border. I can tell you that I could secure this border with the resources that we have in less than 5 years if you gave me Janet Napolitano's job and a president that didn't tie my hands. The resources are there. They are not serious. We can't take these people seriously because the people on the other side of the aisle, they want amnesty for a number of reasons. The biggest one, it's a big political boost for them. I don't understand why Republicans think it's a good idea, but somehow they've bought into this idea. From a national security standpoint, We know that we have large numbers, and those large numbers is a quantifiable number in a way. Some of it's classified, some of it's quantifiable, that flow across the southern border that come here to do us harm. And so the big question I would pose out there is why? Why is that 844-page bill, why is it good for America or Americans? I can't get that answer on why it's good for us, but perhaps some of my colleagues do have some answers to that. I suspect they have some criticism. And I'd like to first introduce the gentleman from Texas and my good friend Louie Gohmert. Thank you, Steve. I just make a statement here before we turn it over to questions, and that is I want to express to you all how bad this bill is. And some of us have dug down through it and read significant parts of it, and some of us has also gone through the people that have taken it apart piece by piece and title by title, which is going on supposedly over in the Senate. We will not get an open debate on this bill unless we organize an open debate in some other venue than the United States Congress. It'll be set up in a different way. We'll get a debate all right here in the House of Representatives, but it won't be an open one that lets us really get down and take it apart piece by piece. But here's my understanding of it. It grants amnesty to everybody that's here. It sends an invitation to everybody that's been deported in the past and says to them, reapply, because it's the we really didn't mean it clause in there. Reapply to come back to the United States. And it is an implicit promise that everybody that comes here after the deadline, if they can get here after the deadline, will also get amnesty. That's the package. Everybody here, everybody deported, everybody that gets here, all are going to get it unless they're convicted of a felony, and we'll come across them later. By the way, nobody's coming out of the shadows that doesn't want to come out of the shadows. The people that they think are going to be sorted out by this system, felons are not going to show up to register. Has anybody pointed that out to the Gang of Eight? They're not. They're going to live in the shadows here in the United States. But here's how bad this is. You all know how badly I despise Obamacare. I've spent years of my life fighting against Obamacare. I've stood here many, many times and done that. I despise that bill because it's an unconstitutional takings of our bodies, our health, our skin, and everything inside it. It's terrible, and it diminishes the destiny of America. But if I have to choose between accepting, if I came down to this, if it was somehow there was an offer that said you're going to get one or the other, and you have to choose one, I would take Obamacare and try to live with that before I'd ever accept this amnesty plan. Because the amnesty plan is far, far worse than Obamacare. That genie cannot be put back in the bottle. We can repeal Obamacare. We can over time pay for it. We can over time get back our doctor-patient relationship. But if this amnesty goes through, there's no undoing it. The genie of the left will have escaped from the bottle, and he will be as amorphous as a puff of smoke. You will not get him back in that bottle, and we have to live with this in the American civilization and culture in perpetuity. That's not the thing that was envisioned by Ronald Reagan or our founding fathers. And I remember Ed Meese wrote an article in 2006 that said if Ronald Reagan had amnesty to do over again, he would not make that same mistake. And I hope that he reiterates that op-ed sometime in this debate. Questions?
Kind of a watershed moment to gain Hispanic voters in the election. After 2012, they're very concerned about losing that constituency group moving forward. What would you say to some of your colleagues who are kind of pushing for this legislation? And are you concerned at all that there aren't going to be enough?
I'm incredulous with the conclusion that they drew when the sun came up on the morning of November 7th. They didn't have any data to work with. They just said that Republicans lost, that Mitt Romney would be the president-elect on that morning if he just hadn't said two words, self-deport. Is it really that sensitive an issue out here to stand up for the rule of law? And the data that it goes completely contrary to the allegations that they've made. So they've fallen back since they know that this is a huge boon for Democrats. They have known that for a long time. In 2006 or so, on a day about like this, there were tens of thousands over on the west lawn of the Capitol. Teddy Kennedy went out before them and said through an interpreter, a Spanish interpreter, he said, "Some say report to be deported. I say report to become an American citizen." I saw that live on C-SPAN. I wasn't standing next to him that day, but that was the message, which is we're going to recruit all you folks that we're going to give amnesty to become Democrats. They know that. They learned that. They are in the process of seeking to establish another monolithic voting bloc, and that's why they spend tens of millions calling Republicans racists, and somehow the Republicans that are advocating for this completely ignore that fact. And And so there's not a rational approach on the part of them. I cannot unravel that approach. It doesn't make sense to me, and I've asked them a lot. They just say, we have to grant this because it starts a conversation. So they would sacrifice the rule of law on the altar of political expediency for the purposes of starting a conversation that would ensure that Republicans don't win another national election, in my view.
Do you think I see a lot of border states represented here, but I don't see any Californians. Do you have some Californians who are also supporting?
You know, I have to look across the roster and see, but we have a lot of rule of law Republicans that stand with us that aren't here today as well. This number is growing within our conference, and I want to say this, that, you know, for people to take on a label and say that they are conservatives, but they are for a bill that is a $6.3 trillion deficit over that period of time, and a bill that would identify clearly that the groups that they would bring in could not make a net financial contribution in any single year. That ought to take care of the conservative side of this. These are House conservatives, but we're for this because of the rule of law. And I want to see a healthy nation. I've said many times, and I think this is an important point to make, there's a vigor that comes with legal immigration that's unique to America. I could go down through the pillars of American exceptionalism when we can name them: speech, religion, press, it goes on. But there's another pillar of American exceptionalism in addition to the rule of law that we talked about here today, and that is American vigor. Because this country got the cream of the crop of every donor civilization on the planet. We got the dreamers that saw the Statue of Liberty. They were inspired. They came here and decided they could be what they could become only in America. And so they took greater risks. They sacrificed more. When they came here, they didn't squander their opportunities. That's part of the equation for American vigor. And then each generation taught that same thing to their children. That's why we are a can-do country, and I don't want to see that destroyed by an idea over here that's being debated in the Senate today that destroys the rule of law. So I think I'm going to one more question and then wrap it up. Right here, sir.
Do you believe the House leadership, Chairman Goodlatte, Speaker Boehner, Painter, do you believe that they're on your side of this debate, or are they on the other side? And if they are on the other side, how are you going to prevent this from becoming law?
Well, if they're not on our side, I'd suggest that they are convertibles. And what's going on here today is to help them undergo a conversion. I've worked with Chairman Goodlatte for more than 10 years on two committees, Judiciary and Ag. I know him well. I know how he thinks. And he is a very smart man with a good set of values. He has put out proposed an agenda here that would be a one bill, one issue at a time. My concern is what I saw Chris Van Hollen say the other day, that we could pass out of this House one or two or three immigration bills that would be messaged to the Senate. It might be an E-Verify, it might be an ag worker, it might be a guest worker bill. And once they got sent over to the Senate, if the Senate passes their amnesty bill, I'm concerned that House leadership could appoint a conference committee, and that conference committee could produce from it some version of the amnesty bill that's in the Senate and send it to the floor, unamendable, an up or down vote, in which case every Democrat would vote for it. It would only take a couple of dozen Republicans, and we could be stuck with a very bad bill on the way to the president. So I'm most concerned about that, and I'll continue to talk about that, but I've got confidence in Bob Goodlatte, especially since I've worked with him so closely. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you all, my members, colleagues.